Hello students, welcome to today's video lesson. Today we shall discuss a very important play that discusses some very relevant and grim realities of life. I'm sure you all have come across people with different kinds of disabilities, impairment or handicap. Have you always been sensitive in your interactions with them? Have you made them feel like they were any lesser than a normal human? This play deals with two such characters who have been isolated and alienated from the mainstream society. Before we go into the further details about the play, let us learn a little about the writer Susan Hill. Born in February 1942 in England, Susan Hill is an English author of fiction and non-fiction works. Her novels include The Woman in Black, The Mist in the Mirror, The Beacon, and I Am the King of the Castle. Let us now begin with the play, which has two characters, an old man named Mr. Lamb and a 14-year-old boy named Derek or Derry. The first scene of the play opens in a very idyllic, natural setting with the sound of bird songs and tree leaves rustling in Mr. Lamb's garden. Derry's footsteps are heard as he walks around slowly inside the garden after having entered by climbing over boundary wall. He is startled when Mr. Lamb first speaks to him as he had thought he was alone in the compound. Mr. Lamb calls out to him to ask him to be careful and not step on the fallen crab apples. Derry panics and replies that he had not been aware Mr. Lamb's presence in the garden. He justifies his act of trespass and explains that he had thought that it was an empty garden and hence had come in for a stroll. He becomes angry and defensive when Mr. Lamb expresses wonder at the fact that Derry has chosen to climb the garden walls even though the gates are open. We see Mr. Lamb's trusting nature and tendency towards openness, as he says that he always leaves his gate open. Young Derry, on the other hand, is more cynical. He assumes that he must jump over the wall to get into the garden. Derry never considers that he might be welcomed involuntarily. When Mr. Lamb tries to stop Derry from leaving out of fear, Derry replies that other people are afraid of him. This gives us a hint of what we are about to learn about Derry. In his characteristic aggressive bitterness, Derry explains to Mr. Lamb about how people usually react on seeing him. He launches into an angry monologue on how they look at him, comment on the apparent ugliness of his face and pity him. He says that some are even afraid of him. He further confesses how he too is afraid of looking at himself in the mirror. This reaction of Derry stems from the fact that the people around him have always looked at him with sympathy, pity, or fear. They have made him feel different and less than the others. Teenage is already a very sensitive time of growth when people undergo various changes. Teenagers are the most aware and conscious of their appearance. Thus, Derry, being a teenager, suffers from an immense inferiority complex and severe body image issues. Mr. Lamb starts talking about how he was going to pick his crab apples later to make jelly, and he offers for Derry to help him. This is generous invitation extended by Mr. Lamb, which also slightly hints at his own loneliness. However, Derry reacts angrily as he thinks Mr. Lamb is avoiding asking him the real question. He challenges Mr. Lamb to ask him about it. Next, the nature of Derry's disability, or rather impairment, is revealed as he narrates how half his face got burnt by acid. He says that it ate his face up and also ate him. Meaning, not only has the acid disfigured him, it has also broken his confidence and has gradually fed into his self-esteem and corroded his identity. Mr. Lamb then diverts his attention to the corner of his garden, which Derry first mistook to be rubbish. He then notices the weeds growing in the heap. Mr. Lamb questions Derry why one green plant is called a flower while another is called a weed, and considered useless and rubbish when both are living, growing plants. Whether a plant is considered a weed or a flower is just a matter of perspective, and perspectives can change and vary. Similarly, Derry can change the way he views the world and himself and should not be demotivated by what others think of him. Next, Mr. Lamb points out that his tin leg, the result of a bomb explosion, and Derry's disfigured face are the same in that they are both living human beings with their own lives. He further tells Derry how he has gotten used to being called Lemmy Lamb. Derry says that Mr. Lamb can at least wear trousers and cover up his tin leg, but Derry has to bear the staring eyes of people. Mr. Lamb replies that people get tired of staring at the same thing, as there are plenty of other things for the people to stare at instead, like crab apples or the weeds or a spider climbing up a silken ladder or the tall sunflowers of his garden. Thus, we notice how Mr. Lamb, being an adult and having lived with his impairment for a longer time, has a much more positive and calmer attitude towards life. He understands what it is to be mocked at, but he also understands that after a while, people tire of the mocking and the staring and move on to other things to look at. Next, Mr. Lamb mentions the story of Beauty and the Beast. Derry says that he is already familiar with the plot, how Beauty loved the monstrous beast for himself and not for his appearance and kissed him, which led to his change. Derry, however, feels differently about this allegory and says that no one would kiss him ever, and he would not change like the beast. Moreover, his mother too avoids kissing him on the disfigured side of his face, and she only feels obligated to kiss him because she is his mother. What happens next? How does Mr. Lamb try to make Derry feel good about himself? We shall find out in the next part of this video lesson. See you soon.